You know, they say family drama makes for the best stories, but I never thought I'd be living in one that would completely shatter everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. My name is Sarah, and what I'm about to tell you happened just 3 months ago at my brother's rehearsal dinner. It's a story about class, secrets, and how sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us in ways we never saw coming. But before I dive into this mess, let me just say, if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family, or if you've ever been judged for where you come from, please stick around. And hey, if this story resonates with you, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I'm just a regular person sharing real stories about real life, and knowing that you're here with me makes all the difference. Let me paint you a picture of where this all started. I'm 32 years old, a single mom to my 8-year-old daughter Emma, and I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. I'm a cashier at Target during the day, and I clean offices at night. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps a roof over our heads. My brother Jake, on the other hand, is a successful lawyer who drives a BMW and lives in one of those fancy neighborhoods where every lawn looks like it belongs in a magazine. Growing up, Jake and I were inseparable. We came from nothing. Our parents worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, and we wore hand-me-downs and shopped at thrift stores. But Jake was always the smart one, the one who was going to make something of himself. He got a full scholarship to college, then law school, and slowly but surely, he started climbing that social ladder. I was so proud of him, you know? Even when he started dating women who wouldn't give me the time of day, I was just happy he was happy. Then he met Victoria Pemberton, and yes, she always insisted on using her full name, came from old money. The kind of family that has streets named after them and donates wings to hospitals. She was beautiful in that effortless way that comes from having personal trainers and dermatologists, and never having to worry about where your next meal is coming from. When Jake first introduced her to me 2 years ago, I could tell immediately that she looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her shoe. But I tried. God, I tried so hard to win her over. I invited them to Emma's birthday parties. I offered to babysit when they wanted date nights. I even saved up money I didn't have to buy her expensive gifts for Christmas and her birthday. Nothing worked. She was always polite, but in that cold, distant way that made it clear she was just tolerating my presence. The wedding planning was where things really started to get ugly. Victoria wanted everything to be perfect, and by perfect I mean expensive and exclusive. The engagement party was at some country club that required a jacket and tie, and I had to borrow money from my mom to buy Emma and me appropriate outfits. The bridal shower was at a fancy hotel downtown, and I felt so out of place among all these women talking about their second homes and their children's private schools. But the worst part wasn't even Victoria's obvious disdain for me. It was watching my brother change. Jake started making comments about how I needed to better myself and think about Emma's future. He'd suggest that maybe I should go back to school, get a real career, as if the work I was doing to support my daughter wasn't real enough. He started distancing himself from our parents too, claiming he was too busy with work to visit, but I knew the truth. He was embarrassed by where he came from. The rehearsal dinner was set for the Friday before the wedding at this ridiculously expensive restaurant called Le Bernardin. I'd never eaten anywhere that fancy in my life, and I was nervous as hell. I spent my last $60 on a dress from Marshall's, and I'd practiced my table manners in front of the mirror like some kind of debutante. Emma was my +1, and she looked adorable in her little blue dress that I'd found at a consignment shop. When we walked into that restaurant, I felt like everyone was staring at us. The other guests were all dressed in designer clothes, talking about their ski trips to Aspen and their summer houses in the Hamptons. I found our table and sat down, trying to blend into the background. But Emma was excited and chatty, asking questions about the fancy silverware and the flowers on the table. Victoria's maid of honor, a woman named Brittany who worked in finance, started making small talk, asking me about my job. I was honest. I told her I worked retail and cleaned offices. The look of pity that crossed her face made my stomach turn. "Oh, that's so noble," she said, in that tone that made it clear she thought anything but. As the evening progressed, I noticed the other guests were drinking quite a bit. The wine was flowing freely, and the conversation was getting louder and more boisterous. Victoria was holding court at the head table, telling stories about her sorority days and her study abroad program in Paris. She looked radiant and confident, everything I'd never been. Then came the speeches. Jake's best man talked about their college days and their golf games. Victoria's father gave a speech about how proud he was of his daughter for finding such a successful young man. When it was Jake's turn, he talked about love and partnership and building a life together. He thanked Victoria's parents for welcoming him into their family, and he talked about how excited he was to start this new chapter. I waited for him to mention our parents, or our childhood, or anything about where he came from, but he didn't. It was like the first 30 years of his life had never happened. After the speeches, people started mingling again. Emma was getting tired, and I was thinking about calling it a night when I overheard Victoria talking to a group of her friends near the bar. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices were carrying, and I heard my name. "I just don't understand why Jake insists on including her in everything," Victoria was saying, her voice slightly slurred from the wine. "I mean, I get that she's family, but she's just so different. She doesn't fit in with our crowd at all." One of her friends, a woman I recognized from the bridal shower, laughed. "Different is putting it nicely. Did you see that dress she's wearing? It looks like something from Walmart." "Actually, it probably is from Walmart," Victoria said, and they all laughed. "Look, I'm trying to be supportive, but I can't help but worry about what people will think. I mean, when we have dinner parties or charity events, I can't exactly invite the cleaning lady, can I?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I knew Victoria didn't like me, but hearing her reduce me to nothing more than the cleaning lady in front of her friends was devastating. But what came next was even worse. "And don't even get me started on that kid of hers," Victoria continued. "Emma is sweet enough, I guess, but she's so rough around the edges. She doesn't have any manners, and she's always asking inappropriate questions. I just worry about the influence she'll have on our children someday." "Well, maybe you can limit their exposure," another friend suggested. "You know, holiday visits and that sort of thing." "That's the plan," Victoria said. "I've already talked to Jake about it. Once we're married, we're going to start setting some boundaries. I mean, I understand loyalty to family, but there comes a point where you have to think about your own future, right?" I was shaking with rage and hurt. How dare she talk about my daughter like that? Emma was the sweetest, smartest, most wonderful kid in the world, and she was judging her based on what? The fact that we didn't have money? The fact that I hadn't been born into privilege? I was about to march over there and give Victoria a piece of my mind when Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, I need to go to the bathroom," she whispered. I took her hand and led her away from the bar, my heart pounding with anger and humiliation. In the bathroom, Emma looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. "Mom, are you okay? You look sad." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired." "That lady was talking about us, wasn't she?" Emma said quietly. "The pretty one in the white dress." I was surprised that she'd noticed. "What do you mean, honey?" I heard her say my name, and she was looking at us when she was talking. Emma's lower lip started to tremble. Did I do something wrong? My heart broke into a million pieces. My 8-year-old daughter was blaming herself for some entitled woman's cruelty. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. You're perfect exactly as you are." "Then why doesn't she like us?" I knelt down to Emma's level and took her hands. Some people judge others based on silly things like money or clothes or jobs, but that says more about them than it does about us. We know who we are, and that's all that matters. Emma nodded solemnly, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. She was young, but she wasn't stupid. She understood that we were different from these people, and now she was starting to understand that some people saw that difference as something shameful. We went back to the table, and I spent the rest of the evening trying to act normal, but inside I was seething. I kept watching Victoria, so poised and perfect, holding court with her friends, and I wondered if she had any idea how much damage her words had done. I wondered if she cared. As the evening was winding down, Victoria approached our table. She was smiling that bright fake smile she always wore around me. "Sarah, I'm so glad you could make it tonight. Emma looks absolutely adorable." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her I'd heard every word she'd said about us. Instead, I just smiled back. "Thank you. It's been a lovely evening. I hope you'll be able to make it to the wedding tomorrow." she said, though her tone suggested she hoped exactly the opposite. We wouldn't miss it, I replied. Victoria's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Wonderful. Well, I should go mingle with the other guests. See you tomorrow. As she walked away, Emma looked up at me. Mom, I don't like her. Why not, sweetheart? She's fake. Her smile doesn't match her eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, right? My 8-year-old daughter had seen right through Victoria's act. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening over and over in my mind. I thought about all the times Victoria had made me feel small, all the comments about my clothes or my job or my apartment. I thought about how she'd talked about setting boundaries, about limiting Emma's exposure to their future children. I thought about how my own brother had stood by and let it happen, and I realized that I was done. I was done trying to win over someone who would never accept me. I was done pretending that Victoria's treatment of me was okay. I was done protecting my brother from the consequences of his choices. The next morning, I got Emma ready for the wedding. I'd bought her a beautiful dress for the occasion, navy blue with little white flowers, and she looked like an angel. I put on my best outfit, a black dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, and tried to psych myself up for another day of feeling like an outsider. The wedding was at some historic mansion outside the city, the kind of place where movie stars get married. There were hundreds of guests, all dressed to the nines, all talking about things I couldn't relate to. Emma and I found our seats in the back, because of course we were relegated to the back, and waited for the ceremony to begin. The wedding itself was beautiful. I'll give Victoria that. She looked stunning in her designer gown, and Jake looked handsome in his tuxedo. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, talking about partnership and love and building a life together. It was everything a wedding should be, and for a moment, I felt a pang of happiness for my brother. But then came the reception. The reception was held in a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers and flowers everywhere. Our table was once again in the back, far from the head table where the wedding party sat. I recognized a few faces from the rehearsal dinner, but most of the guests were strangers to me. As the evening progressed, I watched Victoria work the room like the social butterfly she was. She was charming and gracious, the perfect bride, and everyone seemed to adore her. I found myself wondering if I'd imagined the conversation I'd overheard the night before. Then came the speeches. The best man told funny stories about Jake's bachelor party. The maid of honor talked about Victoria's kindness and generosity. Victoria's father talked about how proud he was of his daughter and how grateful he was to Jake for making her so happy. And then Jake stood up to give his speech. He started by thanking everyone for coming, for celebrating with them, for being part of their special day. He talked about how lucky he was to have found Victoria, how she'd made him a better man, how excited he was to start their life together. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I also want to thank Victoria for helping me understand what family really means. She's shown me that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who lift you up, who support your dreams, who help you become the best version of yourself. She's helped me realize that sometimes, in order to move forward, you have to leave certain parts of your past behind. The words hit me like a physical blow. He was talking about us, about me, about our parents, about Emma. He was essentially announcing to everyone that we were no longer part of his life, that we were part of the past he was leaving behind. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, but I blinked them back. I would not cry. I would not give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing me break down. But Emma was tugging on my sleeve again. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it, sweetheart? I know something about the pretty lady in the white dress, something she doesn't want people to know. I looked down at my daughter, confused. What do you mean? Yesterday, when we were at that fancy restaurant, I went to the bathroom by myself, remember? And I heard her talking on the phone in there. She was crying. I was intrigued, despite myself. What was she saying? Emma looked around to make sure no one was listening, then whispered, she was talking to someone named Marcus. She was saying she was sorry, and that she loved him, and that she wished things could be different. She said she was only marrying Uncle Jake for his money, and that she would find a way to be with Marcus after the wedding. My heart stopped. Are you sure that's what you heard? Emma nodded solemnly. She was crying really hard, Mom, and she said she felt terrible about lying to everyone, but that she didn't have a choice because her family was poor now and Uncle Jake was rich. I stared at my daughter, trying to process what she'd just told me. Victoria, the woman who'd looked down on me for being poor, was apparently poor herself. Victoria, who'd just married my brother, was in love with someone else. Victoria, who'd called me trash, was living a lie. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Emma?" "Yes, Mom. I'm not lying. I know what I heard." I believed her. Emma had always been honest with me, even when the truth got her in trouble. And something about this revelation made sense. Victoria's family was old money, but old money didn't always mean current money. Maybe they'd lost their fortune, and Victoria was marrying Jake to secure her financial future. I looked around the ballroom at all these people celebrating what they thought was a love story, when in reality, it was a complete fraud. I thought about my brother, so proud and happy, completely oblivious to the fact that his new wife was using him. And I thought about what Victoria had said about me the night before, about how I didn't fit in with their crowd, about how I was just the cleaning lady, about how she was going to limit Emma's exposure to their future children. A plan started forming in my mind. It wasn't a nice plan, and it wasn't a plan that the old Sarah would have even considered. But the old Sarah had been trying to be the bigger person, trying to win over someone who would never accept her. The new Sarah was done being nice. I excused myself from the table and went to find a quiet corner where I could think. I needed to figure out how to handle this information. I could confront Victoria directly, but she'd probably just deny it. I could tell Jake, but he was so infatuated with her that he probably wouldn't believe me. I could just keep quiet and let the truth come out on its own. But that could take months or years, and by then, Jake might be even more deeply invested in the marriage. No, I needed to do something more dramatic, something that would expose Victoria's lies in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. I went back to the table where Emma was sitting, looking bored and picking at her wedding cake. "Emma, I need you to think very carefully about what you heard Victoria say on the phone. Do you remember anything else? Any other details?" Emma scrunched up her face, concentrating. "She said something about meeting Marcus at their special place after the honeymoon. And she said she was sorry for lying to everyone, but that she didn't have a choice because her daddy lost all their money in some kind of business thing." This was getting better and better. Not only was Victoria cheating on my brother, but she was also lying about her family's financial situation. She was essentially committing fraud. Did she say anything about when she would meet Marcus? "Next week, I think." She said something about Tuesday at 3 o'clock at the coffee shop where they first met. I couldn't believe my luck. Emma had inadvertently gathered enough information to expose Victoria's entire scheme. Now I just had to figure out how to use it. The DJ was playing slow songs, and couples were swaying on the dance floor. Jake and Victoria were in the center, lost in each other's eyes, and I felt a pang of sympathy for my brother. He really loved her, and finding out the truth was going to devastate him. But then I remembered Victoria's words from the night before. I remembered how she'd talked about my daughter, how she'd planned to cut us out of Jake's life. I remembered how she'd called me trash, how she'd laughed about my clothes and my job. My sympathy evaporated. I waited until the reception was winding down, until most of the guests had had a few drinks and were feeling sentimental and chatty. Then I approached Victoria's maid of honor, Brittany, who was standing near the bar with a group of bridesmaids. "Excuse me," I said, putting on my most innocent smile. "I'm Jake's sister, Sarah. I don't think we've been properly introduced." Brittany looked at me with that same pitying expression she'd worn at the rehearsal dinner. "Oh yes, of course. How are you enjoying the wedding?" "It's beautiful," I said. "Victoria looks absolutely radiant. She must be so excited to start her new life with Jake." "Oh, she is," Brittany gushed. "She's been planning this wedding for months. She's such a romantic." "That's so sweet," I said. "I bet she's one of those women who's been dreaming about her wedding day since she was a little girl." "Actually, it's funny you mention that," said one of the other bridesmaids, a woman I didn't recognize. "Victoria almost didn't go through with it. She was having second thoughts right up until the last minute." I tried to look surprised. "Really? I would never have guessed. She seems so happy." "Well, she is now," Brittany said quickly, shooting the other bridesmaid a warning look. "She was just nervous, you know. Wedding jitters." "Of course," I said. "That's completely normal." I'm sure it had nothing to do with that phone call she made yesterday. The bridesmaids exchanged glances. What phone call? Brittany asked. Oh, I probably shouldn't have mentioned it, I said, looking embarrassed. My daughter overheard her talking to someone yesterday at the rehearsal dinner. She was probably just calling her family or something. What did she hear? Another bridesmaid asked, leaning in closer. I looked around as if making sure no one else was listening. Well, Emma said she heard Victoria talking to someone named Marcus. She was crying and saying she was sorry and that she loved him. The color drained from Brittany's face. Marcus? You know him? I asked innocently. Marcus is Victoria's ex-boyfriend, Brittany said slowly. They dated for 2 years before she met Jake. She was really in love with him. Oh my, I said, putting my hand to my chest. That's terrible. I'm sure Emma misunderstood what she heard. But the damage was done. I could see the doubt creeping into their eyes. These women knew Victoria better than anyone, and they knew about Marcus. They were starting to put the pieces together. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, backing away. I probably shouldn't have said anything. Please don't mention this to anyone. But I knew they would. By the end of the night, half the wedding party would know about Victoria's phone call to Marcus. And once that seed of doubt was planted, it would grow. I spent the rest of the reception watching the whispers spread through the crowd. I saw Brittany talking quietly to other bridesmaids, saw them glancing over at Victoria with worried expressions. I saw Victoria's cousin pulling her aside for what looked like a serious conversation. Emma and I left the reception early, claiming that she was tired. As we walked to our car, Emma looked up at me with those innocent eyes. Mom, why did you tell those ladies about what I heard? I knelt down to her level. Sometimes, sweetheart, the truth needs to come out, even when it's hard. Is Uncle Jake going to be sad? He might be for a while, but he'll be better off in the long run. Emma nodded solemnly. The pretty lady wasn't very nice to us. No, she wasn't. So now other people know she's not nice. Something like that. The next few days were a whirlwind. I kept my phone on silent, not wanting to deal with any drama while Jake and Victoria were on their honeymoon. But I couldn't help checking social media to see if there were any developments. And there were. On Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from my mom. Sarah, have you heard from Jake? No, Mom. He's on his honeymoon. Why? Well, I just got the strangest call from Victoria's mother. She was asking if I knew anything about some scandal involving Victoria and another man. She seemed very upset. My heart started racing. What kind of scandal? I don't know the details, but apparently some of the wedding guests have been talking. There are rumors that Victoria is cheating on Jake, or that she married him for his money, or something like that. Mrs. Pemberton was beside herself. I tried to sound surprised. That's terrible. I can't believe anyone would spread rumors like that. I know, right? I mean, I never particularly liked Victoria, but I can't imagine she would do something like that. She seemed so in love with Jake. After I hung up with my mom, I sat in my living room staring at my phone. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt. On one hand, Victoria deserved to be exposed for the fraud she was. On the other hand, I was about to destroy my brother's marriage and break his heart. But then I remembered her words from the rehearsal dinner. I remembered how she'd talked about limiting Emma's exposure to their future children. I remembered how she'd called me trash, how she'd laughed about my clothes and my job. The guilt evaporated. On Wednesday, I got a call from Jake. His voice was shaking, and I could tell he'd been crying. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course, Jake. What is it? Did you hear anything at the wedding about Victoria and another man? I took a deep breath. What do you mean? There are rumors going around that she's cheating on me, that she married me for my money, that she's in love with someone else. Jake, Please, Sarah, I need to know. Did you hear anything? Did you say anything? I could lie to him. I could pretend I didn't know anything about it. But he was my brother, and despite everything, I loved him. Jake, there's something I need to tell you, but you're not going to like it. I told him everything. About what I'd overheard at the rehearsal dinner, about Victoria's cruel comments about me and Emma, about the phone call Emma had overheard. I told him about the conversation with the bridesmaids, about how the rumors had started. Jake was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Then he said, "You destroyed my marriage." Jake, I didn't. You destroyed my marriage because you were jealous, because you couldn't stand that I was happy. That's not true, I said, my voice breaking. I was protecting you. She was using you. You don't know that. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know what Emma heard. I know what Victoria said about us. I know. Emma is 8 years old, Sarah. She probably misunderstood what she heard. Jake, please, you have to believe me. I wouldn't make this up. I can't talk to you right now, he said, and hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling like my world was falling apart. I'd lost my brother, possibly forever, all because I'd wanted to expose Victoria's lies. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been jealous. Maybe I had destroyed his marriage out of spite. But then, 2 days later, I got another call from my mom. Sarah, you're not going to believe this. Victoria's mother just called me again. Apparently, Jake hired a private investigator to follow Victoria, and they caught her meeting with another man at a coffee shop. They have pictures, video, everything. My heart stopped. What? It's all true, Sarah. Everything people were saying about her. She's been cheating on Jake, and apparently she's been lying about her family's financial situation too. Her father lost most of their money in some bad investments, and she married Jake to secure her future. I couldn't speak. I felt vindicated and devastated at the same time. Jake is filing for an annulment, my mom continued. He's absolutely heartbroken, but he's also furious. He can't believe he was so blind to who she really was. Has he said anything about me? Not yet. But Sarah, I think you need to reach out to him. He's going to need his family right now. I waited a few more days before calling Jake. When he finally answered, his voice was flat and tired. I'm sorry, I said, before he could say anything. I'm sorry for the way I handled things. I'm sorry for spreading rumors. I'm sorry for hurting you. Sarah, He stopped, and I could hear him crying. Jake, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to protect you. I know, he said quietly. I know you did. And I'm sorry too. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I'm sorry for letting Victoria make you feel unwelcome. I'm sorry for being embarrassed by our family. You don't have to apologize for that. Yes, I do. I got so caught up in trying to fit into Victoria's world that I forgot who I was. I forgot where I came from. I forgot what was really important. We talked for 2 hours that night. Jake told me about the private investigator, about the photos of Victoria with Marcus, about the financial records that showed her family's bankruptcy. He told me about the conversation he'd had with her when he confronted her with the evidence, about how she'd admitted everything. She said she did love me in her own way, Jake said, but she loved Marcus more, and she loved the security I could provide most of all. I'm so sorry, Jake. You know what the worst part is? She was planning to stay married to me and keep seeing Marcus on the side. She was going to make me live a lie for the rest of my life. But you found out the truth. That's what matters. Because of you. Because of what Emma heard. If you hadn't said anything, I might have spent years in a fake marriage wondering why I was never happy. Jake, I have to ask you something. Are you angry with me for the way I handled it? He was quiet for a moment. I was furious. I thought you were just trying to sabotage my happiness because you were jealous of Victoria's wealth and status. I was jealous, I admitted, but not of her wealth. I was jealous of how easily she fit into your new life when I felt like I was being pushed out. You were never being pushed out, Sarah. I was trying so hard to be someone I wasn't that I lost sight of who I really was. So we're okay? We're okay. And Sarah, I owe you an apology. For how I treated you, for how I let Victoria treat you, for the things I said about bettering yourself. There's nothing wrong with the life you've built. You're a good mother. You work hard. You're raising an amazing daughter. I was an idiot to ever make you feel otherwise. The relief I felt was overwhelming. I love you, Jake. I love you too, sis. 3 months later, Jake and I are closer than we've ever been. He's been spending a lot of time with Emma and me, and he's reconnected with our parents. He's also been going to therapy to work through his issues with class and status, and he's been much happier. As for Victoria, she moved back to her parents' house and is apparently working as a real estate agent. Jake saw her once at a coffee shop with Marcus, and she looked miserable. I almost feel sorry for her, but then I remember how she talked about my daughter, and the sympathy disappears. The whole experience taught me something important about family and about standing up for yourself. I spent so long trying to win over someone who would never accept me, trying to fit into a world that didn't want me. But family isn't about money or status or fitting in. It's about love and support and being there for each other, even when things get messy. I also learned that sometimes the truth is ugly, but it's still the truth. Victoria was living a lie, and that lie was hurting my brother. Was I wrong to expose her the way I did? Maybe. Could I have handled it differently? Probably. But I don't regret it, because now Jake is free to find real love with someone who values him for who he is, not what he can provide. Emma, meanwhile, has learned some valuable lessons about honesty and integrity. She's also learned that sometimes adults make mistakes, and that it's important to speak up when you see something wrong, even if it's hard. "Mom," she said to me last week, "I'm glad I told you about that phone call." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because Uncle Jake is happy now, and because that mean lady can't hurt us anymore." Out of the mouths of babes, right? I want to leave you with this thought. Family drama is never easy, and sometimes doing the right thing means making difficult choices. But in the end, the truth has a way of coming out, and the people who truly love you will stand by you, even when things get complicated. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for what's right, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Have you ever discovered that someone in your family was living a lie? How did you handle it? And if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family, how did you find your way back to the people who matter most? Sometimes the most important thing you can do is trust your instincts, protect the people you love, and remember that real family, the kind that matters, will always accept you for who you are, not who they think you should be.